the knife pressed against her throat before she could scream. Elena Vance had come to this restaurant hoping for a lifeline. Instead, she found her ex-boyfriend's rage in a dining room full of people who wouldn't lift a finger to help. Marcus Hale had always known how to humiliate her, but tonight he'd brought violence. Then a voice cut through the chaos, cold, absolute, terrifying. "Remove your hand, now." Marcus went pale. The knife clattered to the floor, and Elena looked up to see a man in a black suit who made powerful men scatter like children. If you want to see how Elena survives this nightmare, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The restaurant was called Aurelius, and Elena Vance had no business being there. She knew it the moment she stepped through the heavy glass doors and saw the gleaming marble floors, the crystal chandeliers that probably cost more than her entire bakery, the waiters in crisp white shirts moving like dancers between tables draped in ivory linen. This was a place for people who didn't check their bank accounts before ordering wine. People who belonged. Elena belonged in a kitchen covered in flour dust. Not here. But desperation makes you do stupid things. The text message had come 3 days ago from a blocked number. Dinner at Aurelius. Friday, 8 p.m. Come alone. Someone wants to help with your situation. She deleted it immediately. Scam, obviously. Probably some creep who'd seen her crying outside the bank last week when they denied her loan extension for the 3rd time. She wasn't that desperate. Except she was. 24 hours later, she'd pulled the message out of her trash folder and stared at it until her eyes burned. Someone wants to help with your situation. The bakery was drowning. She had 17 days before the landlord made good on his eviction threat. Her equipment was held together with duct tape and prayer. Her best employee had quit last month because Elena couldn't afford to pay her anymore. She had nothing left to lose. So here she stood in the only dress she owned that didn't have stains on it. A simple black number she'd bought for her mother's funeral 2 years ago, feeling like an imposter among people who thought $30 appetizers were reasonable. Reservation name? The hostess barely looked up from her tablet. Her blonde hair swept into a perfect chignon that probably required an engineering degree. I don't know. Someone sent me... Are you Elena Vance? Elena's stomach twisted. Yes. The hostess's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Pity, maybe. Or amusement. This way, please. She led Elena through the dining room, past tables where beautiful people ate beautiful food and laughed at jokes Elena couldn't hear. Heads turned as she passed. She felt them cataloging every flaw. The scuff on her shoe, the way her dress hung too loose because she'd lost weight she couldn't afford to lose, the fact that she'd done her own makeup in her car because the bakery's bathroom mirror had better lighting. They stopped at a table near the back. It was set for 2, with a single white rose in a crystal vase. Your companion hasn't arrived yet, the hostess said. Can I bring you something to drink while you wait? Water's fine. Still or sparkling? Elena blinked. Just water. The hostess glided away and Elena sank into the chair before her knees could give out. The menu sat in front of her, leather-bound and heavy. She didn't open it. She couldn't imagine what the prices looked like, and she didn't want to know. Her phone buzzed. She pulled it out, hoping for a message from her mystery benefactor. Instead, she saw a text from Marcus. I know where you are. The blood drained from her face. No, 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 no. She'd blocked his number 6 months ago after the restraining order went through. How did he? Well, look what crawled out of the gutter. Elena's head snapped up, and there he was. Marcus Hale stood beside her table looking exactly like he always did. Sharp suit, perfect hair, smile like a knife. He'd been handsome once, or at least she'd thought so. Now all she saw were the hands that had grabbed her too hard, the voice that had told her she was worthless, the eyes that had watched her bleed and felt nothing. What are you doing here? Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. Having dinner. This is my favorite restaurant. He pulled out the chair across from her and sat down without invitation. Funny seeing you here. I didn't think they let trash through the door. Leave, now. She was already reaching for her purse. There's a restraining order, which expired 2 months ago, sweetheart. You should keep better track of these things. He leaned back in his chair, utterly relaxed. So who's the lucky guy? Don't tell me you actually found someone desperate enough to date you. That's none of your business. Everything about you is my business. I invested 3 years in you, Elena. 3 years trying to make you into something worth keeping. His smile widened. Clearly I failed. Look at you. That dress is from a discount store, isn't it? And you're still wearing those cheap drugstore makeup brands I told you made you look like a prostitute. Her hands clenched in her lap. She would not cry. She would not give him that satisfaction. Why are you doing this? She whispered. Because you embarrassed me. You walked away like I was nothing, like you were better than me. He leaned forward, and his cologne hit her, expensive, suffocating. But you're not better, Elena. You're a failure who runs a failing business in a failing part of town. You're broke, you're alone, and you're here begging for scraps from whoever was stupid enough to take pity on you. I said leave. Or what? You'll call security? He laughed. My family owns the company that owns this restaurant, sweetheart. Who do you think they'll believe? The table next to them had gone quiet. Elena could feel eyes on her, could sense the whispers starting. This was exactly what Marcus wanted, to humiliate her in front of people who mattered, to remind her that she would never belong in places like this. You don't deserve to be here, Marcus said, his voice dropping to something soft and vicious. You don't deserve any of this. You should be on your knees thanking me for even acknowledging you exist. I think, said a new voice, you should choose your next words very carefully. Elena's head turned. A man stood beside their table. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with dark hair swept back from a face that looked like it had been carved from marble by someone who understood violence. His suit was charcoal gray and fit him like it had been born there. His eyes were dark, unreadable, and fixed on Marcus with the kind of intensity that made Elena's breath catch. And Marcus had gone absolutely white. Mr. Moretti, Marcus stammered, standing so fast his chair scraped against the floor. I wasn't. This is just a misunderstanding. Sit down. 2 words. Quiet. Almost gentle. But Marcus dropped back into his chair like he'd been shot. The man, Moretti, didn't look at Elena. He kept his gaze on Marcus, and Elena realized she was watching something she didn't understand. This wasn't just intimidation. This was power. The kind that didn't need to be loud. You have 3 seconds to leave this restaurant, Moretti said. If you're still here when I finish counting, I'll make 1 phone call. By morning, your family's company will be under investigation for fraud, your father will be facing federal charges, and you'll be lucky if you can afford a public defender. Marcus's face had gone from white to gray. You can't. 1. This is 2. Marcus stood. His hands were shaking. This isn't over, he said to Elena, but his voice cracked on the words. 3. Marcus ran. Actually ran, stumbling between tables while other diners stared. Elena watched him disappear through the front doors, and then she realized her own hands were shaking. I apologize for the interruption. Moretti's voice had changed, still quiet, but no longer edged with threat. He pulled out the chair Marcus had vacated and sat down with the casual grace of someone who'd never doubted his welcome anywhere. You must be Elena Vance. She stared at him. You sent the message. I did. Why? Because you need help, and I need something only you can provide. He gestured to the menu. But first, let's eat. You've lost weight. That needs to be corrected. Elena's mind was spinning. Who are you? Victor Moretti. I own several businesses in the city. He opened his menu without looking at it. Real estate, mostly. Some investment firms. A few restaurants, including this one. You own Aurelius? I own the building it's in. The restaurant is simply a tenant. He glanced at her. You're staring. Marcus said his family owns... Marcus Hale is a liar who relies on his father's reputation because he has none of his own. His family owns a mid-level construction company that survives on city contracts they barely qualify for. They don't own anything important. Victor's expression didn't change. But they will lose what they have if Marcus comes near you again. You can't just, I can, and I will. That's not up for negotiation. A waiter appeared at Victor's elbow like he'd been summoned by telepathy. Mr. Moretti, the usual? For 2, and bring the Bordeaux. Right away, sir. The waiter vanished, and Elena found herself alone with a man who'd just threatened to destroy someone's life with the same tone she used to order coffee. I don't understand what's happening, she said. That's reasonable. I'll explain. Victor finally looked at her directly, and Elena felt the full weight of his attention. It was like being seen under a microscope, not cruel, but absolutely thorough. Your bakery is 23 days from foreclosure. You have $68,000 in business debt, another $15,000 in personal credit cards, and your rent is 4 months overdue. Your equipment is failing, your employee retention is non-existent, and the health inspector has you on a watch list because your refrigeration system is one breakdown away from failing. Elena's throat had gone dry. How do you know all that? I made it my business to know. He leaned back in his chair. You're drowning, Elena, and you're too proud to ask for help, which is why you're here tonight, despite having no idea who I am or what I want. What do you want? A year of your time. She blinked. What? I need a fiancé. Someone believable. Someone who can navigate social situations without embarrassing me. Someone who won't mistake the arrangement for something it isn't. His voice was clinical, like he was discussing a business merger. In return, I'll clear your debts, upgrade your equipment, handle your landlord, and provide you with enough operating capital to turn your business into something profitable. Elena's laugh came out strangled. You want me to pretend to be your fiancé? That's insane. It's practical. I have business interests that require a certain social legitimacy. Politicians trust family men more than bachelors. Contracts come easier when your personal life appears stable. He paused. And you need money you don't have and can't earn fast enough. So you want to buy me? I want to employ you. There's a difference. No, there's not. Then consider it charity. I don't care what you call it, as long as you say yes. The waiter returned with wine Elena couldn't pronounce and poured 2 glasses she didn't touch. Her mind was racing. This was crazy. This was the kind of offer you saw in bad movies, not in real life. Men like Victor Moretti, if that was even his real name, didn't just swoop in and save struggling bakers, except he'd just made Marcus run like a scared rabbit. Why me? She asked. If you need someone for this, you could hire an actress, a model, someone who actually fits in places like this. I don't want someone who fits. I want someone real. He took a sip of wine. You've been through hell, Elena. Your business is failing, your ex-boyfriend is a nightmare, and you're still showing up every day trying to make bread. That kind of stubbornness is useful. I'm not stubborn, I'm desperate. Same thing, different framing. He set down his glass. I need someone who won't fall in love with me, who won't mistake our arrangement for a fairy tale, and who has enough steel in her spine to handle the world I live in. You qualify. You don't even know me. I know you got a restraining order against Marcus Hale after he put you in the hospital. I know you emptied your savings to keep your employees paid during the pandemic. I know you told your landlord to go to hell when he offered to work something out if you slept with him. Victor's expression remained neutral. I know you're the kind of person who fights instead of folding. That's all I need to know. Elena's hands were shaking again. This was insane. This was wrong. This was the only option she had left. 1 year, she heard herself say. 12 months. We'll make appearances together, attend events, play the happy couple for whoever needs to see it. You'll live in your own space, maintain your own life, run your business however you want. The only requirement is that when I need you beside me, you're there. And after 12 months, we stage a quiet breakup. Mutual decision, no hard feelings. You walk away with a successful business and no debt. I get what I need from the arrangement. He paused. And Marcus Hale never bothers you again. That last part hit harder than it should have. The idea of never seeing Marcus's face, never hearing his voice, never feeling that spike of fear when her phone buzzed at the wrong time. I need to think about it, she said. You have until dessert arrives. That's not enough time. It's all the time you have. This offer expires tonight. The food arrived then. Plates Elena didn't recognize filled with things she couldn't name. It looked like art. It probably cost more than her weekly grocery budget. Victor ate like this was normal, like dropping 6-figure job offers on desperate women was just another Thursday night. Elena picked up her fork, put it down, picked it up again. What happens if I say no? She asked. You leave. I find someone else. Your bakery closes in 3 weeks, and you spend the next 5 years digging yourself out of debt. Victor cut into something that might have been fish. And Marcus Hale remains a problem for the rest of your life, because men like him don't stop unless someone makes them stop. You're backing me into a corner. I'm offering you a way out. There's a difference. Elena wanted to argue, wanted to tell him to go to hell, wanted to walk out with her head high and her pride intact. But pride didn't pay rent. Pride didn't fix broken ovens or replace failing refrigerators. Pride didn't make Marcus disappear. And she was so tired of being afraid. If I say yes, she said slowly, I need rules. Such as? No, physical expectations. This is business. It stays business. Agreed. I run my bakery my way. You don't get to tell me how to do my job. I have no interest in baking. Do whatever you want. And if either of us wants out early, we can leave. No penalties, no revenge, no... No? Victor's voice cut through hers like a blade. 1 year, Elena. That's the deal. You don't get to run when things get difficult. That's not fair. Life isn't fair, but this is generous. He met her eyes. Take it or leave it. Last chance. The restaurant hummed around them, laughter from nearby tables, the clink of crystal. Somewhere, a piano played something Elena almost recognized. She thought about her bakery, the way sunlight came through the front windows in the morning, the smell of fresh bread, the regular customers who knew her by name. She thought about losing it all. She thought about Marcus showing up at her apartment again, about restraining orders that expired, about being afraid forever. She thought about having nothing left to lose. Okay, she said. 1 year? Victor didn't smile, didn't react at all. He simply pulled a card from his jacket and slid it across the table. My attorney will contact you tomorrow with the contract. Read it carefully. Sign it if you still agree. He stood, buttoning his jacket. And Elena? She looked up at him. Welcome to a world you don't understand yet. Try not to drown. He walked away, leaving Elena alone with half-eaten food and a business card that simply read, Victor Moretti and a phone number. She sat there until her wine got warm and the waiter started giving her concerned looks. Then she went home and lay awake until dawn, wondering what she'd just agreed to. The contract arrived at exactly 9 a.m. via courier who looked like he moonlighted as a bodyguard. It was 73 pages long and written in language Elena needed 3 cups of coffee and a legal dictionary to parse. The terms were exactly what Victor had promised. 1 year, public appearances as needed, financial support for her business, complete discretion required. There were clauses about social media, about interactions with press, about behavior expectations at events. There was an entire section on what constituted breach of contract, and at the bottom, a payout structure that made Elena's hands shake. $68,000 for business debt, $15,000 for personal debt, $50,000 for equipment upgrades, operating capital of $30,000 per quarter, and at the end of 12 months, a final payment of $100,000. $348,000 total. For pretending to love a man she'd met once. Elena signed it before she could talk herself out of it. The changes started immediately. First came the debt. Elena logged into her bank account 3 days later and watched her negative balance transform into positive numbers. Her credit card zeroed out. The threatening letters from her landlord stopped. She could breathe without the constant weight of financial ruin crushing her chest. Then came the equipment. A team arrived at her bakery with industrial ovens, a new refrigeration system, upgraded mixers. They worked overnight, and when Elena showed up the next morning, her kitchen looked like something from a magazine. Compliments of Mr. Moretti, said the lead installer. He said to tell you the old equipment has been recycled, and you're paid up on rent for the next 12 months. Elena stood in her transformed kitchen and tried not to cry. She hired back Sarah, her best employee, and brought on 2 more bakers. Orders started coming in, catering gigs she'd never qualified for before, wholesale contracts with coffee shops, a standing order from a downtown hotel. Within 2 weeks, her bakery was humming. Within 3 weeks, she got a text from Victor. Fitting tomorrow, 2 p.m. Address attached. Don't be late. The address led to a boutique in a part of town where parking cost more than her old weekly grocery budget. Inside, a woman with perfect posture and shark eyes looked Elena up and down like she was evaluating livestock. You're smaller than I expected, the woman said. We'll need to take in everything at the waist, and these shoes won't work at all. What size are you? Elena endured 2 hours of being measured, draped, pinned, and critiqued. She left with 6 designer dresses, 3 pairs of shoes that cost more than her car, and instructions to return next week for accessories. That night, Victor called. "There's an event Saturday," he said without preamble. "Charity gala, very public. You'll need to wear the navy dress." "Hello to you too. Are you ready for this?" Elena looked at the garment bags hanging in her apartment, at the shoes that sat in boxes too pretty to open. "No." "Good. Honesty is useful." A pause. "I'll pick you up at 7. We'll go over the details in the car." "Victor?" "Yes?" "What if I mess this up?" "You won't." "You don't know that." "I do, because you don't know how to quit, Elena. It's your most valuable trait." He hung up before she could respond. Saturday arrived too fast. Elena spent 3 hours getting ready. Hair, makeup, dress, shoes, jewelry she was afraid to touch. When she finally looked at herself in the mirror, she barely recognized what looked back. She looked expensive. She looked like she belonged. She looked like a lie. Victor arrived exactly at 7 in a car that probably cost more than her entire building. The driver opened her door without speaking, and she slid into leather seats that smelled like money. Victor sat across from her in a tuxedo that made him look like every fantasy Elena had never admitted to having. His eyes traveled over her once, clinical and assessing. "You'll do," he said. "Thanks. You're really good at compliments." "I don't give compliments. I give assessments." He pulled out his phone. "Tonight's event is for pediatric cancer research. Very high profile. Lots of press, lots of money, lots of people who matter. Your job is simple. Stay beside me, smile when appropriate, and don't volunteer information about your background." "Why not?" "Because your real story is too complicated. We're keeping it simple. We met through mutual friends. We've been dating for 4 months. We're taking things slowly." "What mutual friends?" "They don't exist. No one will ask for details." He glanced up. "If they do, redirect. Talk about the bakery, but keep it vague. Talk about me, but keep it complimentary. And if anyone asks about marriage," "Do they ask about marriage?" "Yes." "Say we're focused on the present." Elena's stomach was churning. "This is insane. This is your job. You signed the contract." The car pulled up to a building wrapped in lights and red carpet. Through the tinted windows, Elena could see photographers, beautiful people in beautiful clothes, security guards with earpieces. Her hands had started shaking again. "Elena!" Victor's voice cut through her panic. "Look at me." She did. "You faced worse than this. You faced Marcus. You faced bankruptcy. You faced losing everything you built." His expression hadn't changed, but something in his voice had. "This is just people in expensive clothes pretending they matter. You've survived real things. This is theater." "I don't know how to do theater." "Then follow my lead. I'm very good at it." The door opened. Victor stepped out first and camera flashes exploded. Elena watched him straighten his jacket, watched him transform into someone public and polished, watched him turn and extend his hand back to her. She took it. The cameras went crazy. Victor pulled her close, his hand settling at the small of her back with possessive ease, and Elena realized with a start that he was good at this. He moved through the crowd like water, nodding to people, shaking hands, introducing her with casual confidence. "This is Elena," he said again and again. "She's brilliant." And people believed him. They smiled at her, asked about her bakery, complimented her dress, treated her like she belonged in their world, like she was someone worth knowing, because Victor Moretti said she was. Inside, the gala was exactly as overwhelming as Elena had feared. Crystal chandeliers, champagne fountains, waiters carrying trays of food she couldn't pronounce. Victor guided her through it all with his hand never leaving her back, that constant pressure reminding her she wasn't alone. "Mr. Moretti!" A man in his 60s approached, silver-haired and radiating power. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Senator Crawford, pleasure." Victor's voice had taken on a smoother quality. "May I introduce Elena Vance? She's the owner of Moonflower Bakery downtown." The senator's eyes shifted to Elena with new interest. "A business owner? How refreshing. Most of the women here are, well," he caught himself. "I mean, it's good to see entrepreneurship." "Thank you," Elena managed. "I've been lucky." "Luck has nothing to do with it," Victor said quietly. "She built her business from nothing. It takes skill to survive in that market. The senator smiled. You should cater our next fundraiser. I'll have my assistant contact you. He moved away and Elena realized her heart was pounding. Did that just happen? Yes, and it will keep happening. Victor plucked 2 champagne flutes from a passing waiter and handed her one. Welcome to how power actually works, Elena. It's not about who you know, it's about who knows you. The night blurred after that. More introductions. More conversations where Victor positioned her not as his accessory, but as someone with value. More moments where Elena felt the gap between who she was and who these people thought she was. They were dancing when everything changed. Elena wasn't sure how they'd ended up on the dance floor. One moment they were talking to someone about commercial real estate. The next Victor was pulling her into a waltz she barely knew how to do. Relax, he murmured. I'll lead. I'm terrible at this. You're adequate, that's enough. His hand was firm at her waist, his other hand holding hers like it mattered. He moved with the kind of confidence that came from 1,000 dances at 1,000 events exactly like this one. Elena tried to follow, tried not to step on his shoes, tried to ignore how close he was. You're doing better than you think, Victor said. I'm faking it. Everyone here is faking something. You're just more honest about it. The music swelled and Elena made the mistake of looking up at him. His face was serious, focused, closer than she'd realized. For a second, just a second, she forgot this was a performance. Then someone screamed. The music stopped. The crowd fractured. And Elena saw what everyone else saw. A man in a waiter's uniform running toward Victor with something in his hand. She didn't think, she just moved. Elena threw herself forward, shoving Victor sideways with all her strength. He stumbled. The man lunged, and Elena felt something burn across her upper arm as she went down. Then everything was chaos. Security descended. The man went down hard. Victor was shouting something Elena couldn't hear over the ringing in her ears. She looked down and saw blood on her navy dress, spreading across the fabric. Elena. Victor's hands were on her face, tilting her head up. Elena, look at me. I'm okay, she heard herself say. I'm okay, You're bleeding. It's not that bad. You just saved my life, you stubborn, reckless. He cut himself off, his jaw locked tight. We're leaving. Now. He picked her up, actually picked her up like she weighed nothing, and carried her through the crowd that was still reeling. Elena caught glimpses of shocked faces, of security restraining the attacker, of blood on marble floors. The car was waiting. Victor placed her in the back seat with shocking gentleness, then barked something at the driver she couldn't quite hear. Hospital, she heard. Now. I don't need... You're going to the hospital. That's not a discussion. Elena looked at her arm. The cut was long but shallow, already clotting. It's really not that bad. You threw yourself between me and a knife. It wasn't a knife. I think it was a broken bottle. It was a weapon. And you didn't hesitate. Victor was staring at her like she'd grown a second head. Why did you do that? Elena blinked. Because someone was trying to kill you. That's my problem to handle. Not anymore. We're engaged, remember? That makes it our problem. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or something deeper. You signed a contract to pretend, Elena. Not to actually... I'm not letting someone hurt you, contract or not. She leaned her head back against the seat, suddenly exhausted. Besides, you saved me from Marcus. Least I could do was return the favor. Victor was quiet for a long moment. Then, you're insane. Probably. This changes things. Does it have to? He looked at her, really looked at her, and Elena saw something shift behind his eyes. Yes, he said quietly. I think it does. The hospital was a blur. Stitches, antibiotics, questions Elena didn't know how to answer. Victor stayed the entire time, making phone calls in the hallway, speaking to security guards in low tones, doing whatever powerful men did when their fake fiancés got hurt protecting them. When they finally cleared her to leave, it was past 3 a.m. Victor drove her home himself. The driver mysteriously vanished. He walked her to her door. Thank you, he said. For getting stabbed? For not running. Most people would have run. Elena shrugged, then winced as the movement pulled her stitches. I don't run. You said that's my most valuable trait. I did say that. He hesitated, which was strange. Victor didn't hesitate. I'm going to increase your security. I don't need... That's not negotiable. Someone tried to kill me tonight, which means they'll try again. And now you're a target because you were stupid enough to... He cut himself off. Because you were there. Victor, this is my world, Elena, and it's more dangerous than you understand. His voice had gone quiet again, that deadly soft tone he'd used on Marcus. If you want out of the contract now, I'll tear it up. No penalties, no revenge. You can walk away. Elena looked at him, really looked at him, saw the tension in his jaw, the shadows under his eyes. The way he held himself like violence was always 3 seconds away. She thought about Marcus running, about her bakery alive again, about the way Victor had positioned her tonight, not as decoration but as someone who mattered. I'm not walking away, she said. We made a deal. The deal didn't include getting hurt. The deal was for 1 year. We're barely a month in. She smiled even though her arm hurt and her dress was ruined and she was pretty sure she'd just stepped into something she couldn't take back. I don't quit, remember? You said so yourself. Victor stared at her. Then slowly, he smiled. A real smile. Small and sharp and absolutely lethal. No, he said. You don't. That's going to be a problem. For who? For both of us. He left her there, standing in her doorway with bloody bandages and a designer dress and the strange, creeping certainty that tonight had changed everything. Elena went inside, locked the door, and didn't sleep. Because Victor Moretti had been right about one thing. She'd just stepped into a world she didn't understand. And drowning was starting to look inevitable. The bodyguard showed up at 6 a.m. Elena was still in yesterday's ruined dress, sitting on her couch with cold coffee and the kind of exhaustion that made thinking feel like wading through mud. She'd managed maybe an hour of broken sleep before her arms started throbbing and her brain started replaying the moment that broken bottle had come at Victor's face. The knock was professional. 3 sharp raps, then silence. She opened the door to find a man who looked like he'd been assembled from spare parts of other dangerous people. 6'4", maybe 240, with a jaw that could break concrete and eyes that cataloged every exit in her apartment before she'd finished blinking. Ms. Vance, I'm Collins. Mr. Moretti sent me. Of course he did. Elena rubbed her face. I told him I didn't need... With respect, ma'am, what you need and what you're getting are 2 different things. Collins stepped inside without invitation, his gaze sweeping her small apartment with professional efficiency. I'll be outside your door from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Davis will take the day shift. You won't see us unless there's a problem. This is insane. This is Tuesday. He pulled out a phone, not his personal one, Elena noticed, something sleeker and probably encrypted. Mr. Moretti wants to speak with you. He handed her the phone and stepped into her kitchen, giving her the illusion of privacy while probably listening to every word. Elena pressed the phone to her ear. It's 6 a.m. I'm aware. Victor's voice was crisp, alert. He'd probably been awake for hours. How's your arm? Attached. How's your paranoia? Functioning exactly as it should. Collins will be with you until we determine who sent last night's gift. You mean the guy with the bottle? I mean the organization that paid him. He's not talking, but he will. Something shifted in Victor's tone, going cold and flat. People always talk eventually. Elena's stomach twisted. She didn't want to know what that meant. I don't need a bodyguard. You became a target the moment you stepped between me and a weapon. That makes your safety my responsibility. I'm not your responsibility. I'm your employee. You're both. Accept it, or we tear up the contract right now. Elena looked at Collins, who was examining her kitchen with the same intensity most people reserved for bomb threats. She thought about going back to being alone, to being afraid, to checking over her shoulder every time she left her apartment. Fine, she said. But he stays outside. I'm not having someone breathing down my neck in my own home. Agreed. I'll see you tomorrow night. We have dinner with the mayor. The mayor? Yes. Wear the green dress. He hung up before she could argue. Elena handed the phone back to Collins, who'd somehow materialized at her elbow without making a sound. Does he always do that? What? Make decisions for people without asking. Collins almost smiled. Every day, ma'am. You get used to it. I really don't think I will. The next 36 hours were a crash course in Victor's version of normal. Elena went to her bakery and found two men in suits stationed outside. Not Collins and not Davis. Different men with the same dangerous efficiency. They didn't speak to her, didn't acknowledge her, just stood there like human warning signs. Sarah noticed immediately. Elena? Why do we have bodyguards? It's complicated. Is this about your new boyfriend? Sarah had that look, the one that said she'd been Googling and finding things. Because I saw the pictures from the gala, you and Victor Moretti, and then someone tried to… It's complicated, Elena repeated, harder this time. Sarah backed off, but Elena could feel the questions hanging in the air. Her employees were whispering, her regulars were staring, and when she checked her phone during her break, she found 17 missed calls from numbers she didn't recognize and a text from Marcus that made her blood run cold. Saw what happened. Bet you're scared now. He can't protect you forever. She deleted it, blocked the number, told herself it didn't matter, but her hand shook while she shaped dough for the afternoon rush. That evening, she went home to find Collins outside her door and a package waiting inside. No delivery notice, no explanation, just a large black box tied with silver ribbon sitting on her kitchen counter like it had every right to be there. Inside, another dress. This one was deep emerald green, simple and devastating, with a note in handwriting she was starting to recognize. For tomorrow. The shoes are in the second box. Don't argue. V. Elena pulled out the shoes, sleek black heels that probably cost more than her monthly rent, and tried to remember the last time someone had bought her clothing. Her mother, maybe, back in high school. Marcus had always criticized what she wore but never offered to pay for replacements. Victor just sent her things worth more than her car and expected her to wear them. She should have been insulted, should have been angry. Instead, she felt something uncomfortably close to cared for. The next evening, Victor picked her up in a different car. Still obscenely expensive, still driven by someone who looked like they could kill with a pencil. Elena slid into the back seat wearing the green dress and feeling like an imposter in her own skin. Victor looked up from his phone. His eyes traveled over her once, quick and assessing, then returned to her face. Good, he said. That's it? Good? What else would you like me to say? I don't know. Normal people give compliments. I'm not normal people, and you don't want compliments. You want honesty. He set his phone down. You look like you belong next to me. That's the goal. We've achieved it. Elena didn't know why that stung. You're really bad at this. At what? Pretending to be human. Something flickered across his face. Amusement, maybe. I stopped pretending years ago. It's inefficient. The restaurant was different from Aurelius. Smaller, more intimate, with private rooms and waiters who moved like ghosts. The mayor was already there when they arrived, a broad-shouldered man in his 50s with politician teeth and sharp eyes. Victor, good to see you. He stood, shaking Victor's hand with practiced enthusiasm, then turned to Elena. And you must be the famous Elena Vance. I've heard quite a bit about you. Nothing bad, I hope, Elena said, because that seemed like the right thing to say. On the contrary, Victor tells me you're turning that old building on Fifth into something special. Elena blinked. Yes. The bakery's doing well. Better than well, Victor said smoothly. She's expanding next quarter, planning to add a second location. That was news to Elena, but she kept her face neutral. We're exploring options. Smart. This city needs more small businesses with vision. The mayor sat back down, gesturing for them to join him, especially in neighborhoods the developers have forgotten. The dinner that followed was a masterclass in watching Victor work. He steered conversation like a conductor, bringing Elena in at exactly the right moments, highlighting her business without making her the center of attention. When the mayor asked about the gala incident, Victor deflected with cold precision. An unfortunate situation, nothing Elena needs to worry about. But she was hurt. She's fine. And the matter is being handled. The mayor's expression shifted, not quite fear, but definitely caution. Of course, I'm sure you have it under control. I always do. They talked about city contracts after that, about development projects and zoning changes that went over Elena's head. She smiled, sipped wine she barely tasted, and tried to look like she understood why she was there. It wasn't until they were back in the car that Victor explained. The mayor is pushing through a rezoning proposal that would benefit several of my properties. He needed assurance that I'm stable, invested in the community, not a flight risk. Victor loosened his tie. You help provide that assurance. So I'm a prop. You're a strategic asset. There's a difference. Not to me. Then you're not thinking clearly. He turned to face her. That dinner just secured $15 million in property value for me. Next month, the mayor will approve permits for 3 new developments. The month after that, he'll back my bid for the waterfront project. He paused. And because you were there, because you smiled and talked about your bakery and made me look like someone who cares about this city, none of that will be questioned. You do care about this city. I care about profit. The city is just the vehicle. Elena looked at him, really looked. I don't believe that. You should. It would make this easier. Nothing about this is easy. No, Victor agreed quietly. It's not. They rode in silence for a while. Then, the second location wasn't a lie, by the way. I've already purchased a property on 8th. The paperwork will be on your desk Monday. Elena's head snapped around. You what? Bought you a second location. The building needs work, but it's structurally sound. You'll have it operational within 6 months. You can't just... I didn't ask for... You're thinking too small. 1 bakery is a hobby, 2 is a business, 3 is an empire. His voice was matter-of-fact. If you're going to do this, do it properly. I never said I wanted an empire. You want to survive. Empire is how you survive. The car stopped outside her building. Collins was already there, a shadow in the darkness. Elena started to open her door, then stopped. Victor. Yes? Why are you doing this? Really? He was quiet for a long moment. Because you reminded me that people can be good, and I've spent too long forgetting that matters. Before Elena could respond, he nodded to Collins and her door opened. She stepped out into the night, her mind spinning, and didn't look back as the car pulled away. Upstairs, she found another package, smaller this time. Inside, a phone, new, expensive, with only 2 numbers programmed in, Victor's and Collins's. The note was shorter this time. Keep this with you. Always. V. Elena set it on her nightstand and tried to sleep. She dreamed about broken bottles and blood on marble floors. The next week blurred into a routine that felt surreal. Days at the bakery where business was booming and her employees were starting to ask questions she didn't know how to answer. Evenings with Victor, attending dinners and events and functions where she smiled and played her part. Nights alone in her apartment with Collins outside her door, wondering how her life had become something she barely recognized. Marcus kept texting from new numbers. She blocked each one, but he was persistent. The messages got worse. Threats mixed with nostalgia. Violence wrapped in declarations of love. Elena deleted them without reading past the first line. But she started checking over her shoulder again. Started flinching at sudden sounds. Victor noticed. What's wrong? He asked one night. They were at some charity auction, standing in a corner while people bid insane amounts of money on things nobody needed. Nothing. You're lying. You've been checking the exits every 5 minutes. Elena's jaw tightened. It's nothing I can't handle. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. Victor's hand closed around her wrist. Not hard, but firm. Elena, talk to me. She looked at his hand on her wrist, then up at his face. He looked genuinely concerned, which was strange. Victor didn't do concerned. He did efficient and strategic and cold. Marcus is texting again, she said finally. New numbers. I keep blocking him, but show me. Victor, show me the messages, now. Elena pulled out her phone with her free hand and scrolled back through deleted messages, pulling up the ones she'd saved without quite knowing why. Victor read them, his expression going progressively darker. How long has this been happening? Since the gala. Maybe before. I don't know. Why didn't you tell me? Because it's my problem, not yours. We've discussed this. Your problems are my problems now. He handed her phone back. This stops tonight. You can't just watch me. He made one phone call. 3 sentences, low and clipped. Then he guided Elena toward the exit with his hand on her back, that now familiar pressure that meant they were leaving whether she liked it or not. "Where are we going?" she asked. "To have a conversation." They ended up at a building Elena didn't recognize, industrial, anonymous, the kind of place you'd drive past without noticing. Victor led her inside through corridors that smelled like concrete and old machinery to a room with a table and 2 chairs. Marcus was in one of the chairs. He looked bad, bruised maybe, or just scared. When he saw Elena, his eyes went wide. "Elena, Shut up." Victor's voice cut through whatever Marcus had been about to say. "You're going to listen, and then you're going to leave this city. Those are your only options." Marcus's gaze darted between them. "You can't. This is kidnapping. This is a conversation. Kidnapping involves moving you somewhere. You came here willingly." "I didn't. You said you wanted to talk about—" "I lied. I do that when it's useful." Victor pulled out the other chair and sat, gesturing for Elena to stay back. "Here's what's going to happen, Marcus. You're going to stop contacting Elena. You're going to leave this city. You're going to forget she exists. Or what? Or I show your employer the evidence of your embezzlement, or I send your father proof of your gambling debts, or I simply make you disappear, which is easier than you'd think." Victor's voice never rose above conversational. "Your choice." Marcus looked at Elena. "You're going to let him threaten me?" "You threatened me for 3 years. He's had you here for 10 minutes. Elena's voice was steadier than she felt. "I'd say we're not even close to even. I loved you. You hit me. You belittled me. You made me think I was worthless." The words came out harder than she'd intended. "That's not love, Marcus. That's just cruelty. I was trying to make you better. You were trying to break me. There's a difference." Victor stood. "We're done here. You have 48 hours to leave the city. If I see you, hear about you, or find evidence you've contacted Elena in any form, the things I just threatened become reality." He paused. "Do you understand?" Marcus nodded, something broken in his face. "Good. There's a car waiting outside. It will take you home. Pack your things." Victor took Elena's arm and led her back through the corridors, into the night, into the car that was always waiting. She was shaking. She couldn't stop shaking. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "Yes, I did." "I could have handled—" "No, you couldn't. He would have kept coming. Men like Marcus always do." Victor looked at her. "This is what I do, Elena. I remove problems, permanently." "By threatening people?" "By making them understand there are consequences for their actions. Marcus hurt you. That makes him my problem now." Elena's throat felt tight. "Why do you care?" "Because you're mine to protect." "I'm not yours. I'm your employee." "You're both, and you nearly died protecting me, which means I owe you a debt I can't repay." His voice softened just slightly. "So let me do this. Let me make sure you're safe." Elena looked at him, at this man who threatened people with the same tone most people used to order coffee, who bought her buildings without asking, who'd just terrified her ex-boyfriend into leaving the city. This man who was supposed to be cold and calculated and incapable of caring. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me. I'm not doing this to be kind." "Then why?" Victor was quiet for a long moment. "Because you make me remember what it's like to want to protect something. And I'd forgotten how that felt." They didn't speak for the rest of the drive, but when Victor walked her to her door, he paused. "Tomorrow night, there's someone I want you to meet." "Who?" "My sister. She's difficult, but important." Elena blinked. "You have a sister?" "I have a family. I don't talk about them because they're complicated." He hesitated, which was strange. Victor never hesitated. "Lucia will either love you or hate you. There's no middle ground." That's not ominous at all. "She'll test you, push boundaries, try to find your weaknesses." His eyes met hers. "Don't back down. She respects strength, nothing else." "What if I don't have any strength left?" "You do. You just keep forgetting you're the woman who threw herself at a knife to save a stranger." Victor's hand came up, almost touching her face, then dropped. "You have more strength than anyone I've ever met. You just need to remember that." He left her there, standing in her doorway, trying to process what had just happened. Inside, Elena found she couldn't sleep again. She kept thinking about Marcus's face, about Victor's cold precision, about the way he'd said mine to protect like it was simple truth instead of complicated fiction. This was supposed to be business, a transaction, 1 year of pretending in exchange for financial security. But somewhere between the gala and tonight, between broken bottles and blocked numbers, it had become something else. Something that felt dangerously close to real. Elena pulled out the phone Victor had given her and stared at his number for a long time. Then she typed, "Thank you. For tonight. For Marcus. For everything." The response came immediately. "Stop thanking me. You've earned every bit of protection I give you." Elena stared at those words until her eyes burned. Then she typed, "What happens when the year is over?" The response took longer this time. "I don't know. Ask me in 11 months. She fell asleep with the phone in her hand and dreamed of green dresses and cold voices and the strange, terrifying possibility that she was starting to care about a man who'd told her from the beginning not to. The next night, Elena met Lucia Moretti and learned that Victor's version of difficult was a catastrophic understatement. She was beautiful in the way dangerous things are beautiful. Sharp edges and dark eyes and a smile that promised violence. She looked at Elena the way people look at insects, with casual disdain and the certainty of superiority. "So you're the baker," Lucia said, not bothering to shake hands. "Victor's latest acquisition." Elena said firmly, "and I'm his fiancée, not his acquisition." "Oh, sweetheart, with my brother, there's no difference." They were at Victor's penthouse, a space Elena had never seen before, all glass and steel and views that made her dizzy. Victor had disappeared into his study to take a call, leaving Elena alone with his sister and a bottle of wine that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Lucia poured herself a glass and didn't offer Elena one. "How much is he paying you?" "Excuse me?" "For this arrangement, how much?" Lucia's smile sharpened. "Don't pretend it's real. Victor doesn't do real. He does transactions. Maybe he's changed. Men like Victor don't change. They just get better at hiding what they are." Lucia took a sip of wine. "You seem sweet, naive, exactly his type when he needs someone manageable." Elena felt something cold settle in her chest. "I'm not manageable." "Then you're not his type. Which means this is a business arrangement, which means you're being paid." Lucia leaned forward. "So I'll ask again. How much?" "That's between Victor and me. Nothing involving Victor is private. He owns half this city. Everyone has a price. Everyone has an angle." Lucia's eyes narrowed. "What's yours?" Elena set down her water glass. She still hadn't touched the wine. "My angle is surviving. That enough for you?" "Surviving what?" "Everything. Debt, abuse, men who think they own women because they scared them enough." Elena met Lucia's gaze and didn't flinch. "Your brother gave me a way out. Maybe that makes me an acquisition. Maybe it makes me smart. Either way, I'm still here." Lucia stared at her. Then, slowly, she smiled. And this one looked real. "Oh," she said softly. "You actually have a spine. How refreshing. Did I pass your test?" "With flying colors. Most women Victor brings home either cry or try to impress me. You did neither." Lucia finally poured Elena a glass of wine. "I like you. That's rare. Should I be honored?" "Terrified, actually. When I like someone around Victor, it means they're actually dangerous." Lucia raised her glass. "Welcome to the family, Elena Vance. Try not to get killed." They drank, and Elena tried to ignore how those last words sounded less like a joke and more like a promise. Victor returned an hour later to find his sister and his fake fiancée laughing about something Elena would never tell him. He looked between them with suspicion. "What happened?" "Nothing," Lucia said innocently. "Elena and I were just bonding." "That's what I'm afraid of." "Don't worry, brother. I won't corrupt her. Much." Lucia stood, kissing Victor's cheek. "She's good for you. Don't ruin it." She left in a whirl of expensive perfume and unspoken threats. Victor looked at Elena. "What did she say to you?" "That you don't do real, that everyone has a price, that I should be terrified because she likes me." "All of that is true." "I know." Elena stood, smoothing her dress. "But I'm still here." "Why?" Because I don't break, remember? You told me that was my most valuable trait. Victor stepped closer. Close enough that Elena could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, could smell whatever expensive cologne he wore, could feel the heat coming off him. You're going to be trouble, he said quietly. Probably. I should have chosen someone easier. But you didn't. No. His hand came up, fingers brushing the bandage still visible on her upper arm. I chose you. Elena's breath caught. This is still just business. Is it? You said it was. I say a lot of things. His thumb traced the edge of the bandage, gentle despite everything she knew about him. Most of them are true, but some of them are lies I tell myself to make this easier. What's this? You, me, everything I told myself I wouldn't feel. Elena's heart was pounding. Victor, I should take you home, he said, stepping back. It's late. But he didn't move, and neither did she. And for a long moment, they just stood there in his penthouse, with the city spread below them like a promise neither of them knew how to keep. Then Collins appeared in the doorway, his expression urgent. Sir, we have a problem. Whatever moment had existed shattered. Victor's face went cold, professional. What kind of problem? The kind that requires your immediate attention, and Ms. Vance should probably not be here when you handle it. Victor looked at Elena. Collins will take you home. What's happening? Nothing you need to worry about? If it's about last night, it's always about something, Elena. That's how this world works. He was already moving toward the door. Go home. I'll call you tomorrow. Collins guided her out, gentle but firm, and Elena found herself in the car heading home before she could argue. But as they drove through the city, she saw Collins's jaw tighten, saw him check his mirrors more often than normal, saw his hand drift toward whatever weapon he carried under his jacket. Something was wrong. Something was coming. And Elena was starting to realize that surviving Victor Moretti's world was going to require more than just strength. It was going to require accepting that she'd stepped into a war she didn't understand, and choosing which side she was willing to die for. The call came at 4 a.m. Elena jerked awake to her phone buzzing, the new one Victor had given her. For a second, she just stared at it, her brain too foggy to process what the sound meant. Then she saw Victor's name on the screen and her heart kicked into overdrive. Hello? Get dressed. Collins is bringing you to me. His voice was clipped, running on no sleep and what sounded like pure adrenaline. Now, Elena. What's happening? I'll explain when you're here. 5 minutes. He hung up before she could ask anything else. Elena threw on jeans and a sweater, her hands shaking as she tried to tie her shoes. Through her door, she could hear Collins moving, probably already waiting. She grabbed her keys and pulled open the door to find him there, his expression grim. Ma'am, we need to go. Where? The bakery. Elena's stomach dropped. What happened to my bakery? Mr. Moretti will explain. Please, ma'am, time matters. The drive took 8 minutes that felt like 8 hours. Collins drove fast, running red lights that didn't exist at this hour, while Elena's mind spun through every worst-case scenario. Fire, robbery, structural collapse. Something worse she couldn't even imagine. They pulled up to her building, and Elena saw the damage before Collins had fully stopped the car. The front window was gone. Just gone, replaced by jagged glass teeth and darkness. The door hung crooked on its hinges. And painted across her cream-colored wall in red paint that looked too much like blood were the words, Whore, Traitor, You're next. Elena was out of the car before Collins could stop her, running toward the entrance with her heart in her throat. Victor materialized out of nowhere, catching her before she could step over the threshold. Don't! There's glass everywhere. My bakery is damaged, not destroyed, and you're not going in there until my people have cleared it. His hands were firm on her arms, holding her back. Elena, look at me. She couldn't. She could only stare at her ruined window, at the paint dripping down her wall, at the wreckage of everything she'd built. Elena, harder this time, demanding attention. She looked at him. He was in dark clothes, no tie, his hair disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. There was something in his eyes she'd never seen before, not quite fear, but close enough to make her stomach twist. Who did this? She whispered. We're working on it. Was it Marcus? He left the city. I confirmed it personally. Victor's jaw tightened. This is someone else. Someone who wants to send a message. What message? That you're vulnerable. That being associated with me comes with consequences. He released her arms but stayed close. That they can reach you whenever they want. Elena's legs felt weak. She sat down on the curb because standing seemed impossible. This is because of you, because I'm pretending to be yours. Yes, you said you'd protect me, and I will. This won't happen again. You can't promise that. Watch me. He crouched in front of her, bringing himself to her eye level. Whoever did this made a mistake. They showed their hand, and now I know they're willing to escalate, which means I can plan accordingly. Plan for what? For war. The word hung in the air between them like a threat and a promise both. Elena stared at him, at this man who talked about war with the same casualness other people talked about dinner plans, and realized with creeping certainty that she'd stepped into something far darker than a simple business arrangement. I want out, she said. Victor's expression didn't change. No, you don't. Yes, I do. This is insane. Someone vandalized my business, Victor. They painted... Her voice cracked. They called me a whore. They're trying to scare you. Don't let them win. They're not trying. They succeeded. She stood up, wrapping her arms around herself. I can't do this. The money isn't worth the... This isn't about money anymore. Victor stood with her, and there was something almost gentle in his voice now. You're in this whether you want to be or not. Walking away doesn't make you safe, Elena. It just makes you alone. I was alone before you. I survived. You were drowning before me. There's a difference. He paused. Stay. Let me fix this. Let me show you that I keep my promises. You promised I'd be safe. And you will be. After I handle this. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression darkening. I need to go. Collins will take you to my place. I'm not going to your place. Your apartment isn't secure enough anymore. My building is. He was already walking toward a car Elena hadn't noticed, one of his men holding the door open. Don't argue. I don't have time. Victor. He stopped, turned back. What? Are you going to kill someone? The question hung there between them. Victor looked at her for a long moment, and Elena saw him choose his words carefully. I'm going to do what's necessary to make sure this never happens again. The details don't concern you. They do if I'm the reason. You're not the reason. You're the excuse. There's a difference. He softened slightly. Go to my place. Sleep if you can. I'll be back before noon. He left before she could protest again, disappearing into the car that took off like it was fleeing a crime scene. Maybe it was. Collins touched her elbow gently. Ma'am, we should go. Elena looked back at her bakery one more time, at the broken glass, at the hateful words, at the wreckage of her safe space. Then she let Collins guide her into his car and tried not to think about what Victor was doing in the darkness of early morning. Victor's penthouse was exactly as she remembered, glass and steel and views that made her feel like she was floating above the city. Collins showed her to a guest room that was bigger than her entire apartment, with a bed that looked like it cost more than her car and a bathroom made of marble. Mr. Moretti said to make yourself comfortable. There's clothing in the closet if you need it. Elena opened the closet and found women's clothes in her exact size. Jeans, sweaters, dresses, everything she might need, all with the tags still on. When did he buy these? She asked. Collins almost smiled. 2 weeks ago, ma'am. Mr. Moretti plans ahead. He bought me an entire wardrobe? He prepares for contingencies. This was one of them. Collins left her alone and Elena sank onto the bed trying to process everything. Victor had anticipated this, had known that eventually she'd need to stay somewhere safer, had prepared for it like he prepared for everything else, with cold efficiency and more money than seemed real. She should have been angry, should have felt manipulated. Instead, she felt something uncomfortably close to grateful. Elena didn't sleep. She showered, changed into jeans and a sweater that fit perfectly, and wandered the penthouse like a ghost. The place was huge. 3 bedrooms, an office, a kitchen that looked like it had never been used, a living room with windows that showed the whole city waking up. She found Victor's study by accident, drawn by the only door that was closed. She shouldn't have opened it, should have respected his privacy. But she opened it anyway. The room was lined with books, real books, leather-bound and old. A desk sat in the center, covered in papers and files and what looked like surveillance photos. Elena stepped closer, her curiosity overwhelming her sense of boundaries. The photos were of her, not recent photos, older ones. Her walking into her bakery, her at the bank, her leaving her apartment with bruises barely visible under makeup. Marcus was in some of them, his hand too tight on her arm, his face twisted in anger. Victor had been watching her long before Aurelius, long before the contract. He'd known about Marcus, about her debts, about everything. He'd researched her like she was a project, cataloged her life in files and photographs. I wondered when you'd find those. Elena spun. Victor stood in the doorway, still in his dark clothes, looking like he'd walked through hell and come out the other side. There was blood on his knuckles, not much, but enough to make Elena's breath catch. "You were watching me," she said. "I was gathering information. There's a difference." "Not to me. I needed to know if you were suitable for what I needed. That required research." He walked past her to his desk, shuffling the photos into a drawer like they were nothing. "I don't make decisions without data. You could have just asked me. People lie when you ask them directly. Surveillance doesn't." Elena's hands clenched. "That's a violation. That's due diligence." He looked at her. "Would you prefer I'd offered you a fortune without knowing if you'd take it and run? Without understanding your character, your history, your likelihood to fulfill the contract? I'd prefer you'd treated me like a human being instead of a transaction. You became human the moment you threw yourself in front of that bottle. Before that, you were a calculated risk." Victor's voice was flat, emotionless. "I don't apologize for protecting my interests. I'm not an interest. I'm a person. You're both. And you're in my study without permission, looking through my private files, so perhaps we're both guilty of crossing boundaries we shouldn't." He had a point. Elena hated that he had a point. "Who did you hurt tonight?" she asked instead. "No one who didn't deserve it." "That's not an answer." "It's the only answer you're getting." He moved to his desk, pulling out a laptop and typing something Elena couldn't see. "Your bakery will be repaired by end of business today. New windows, new locks, better security system. I'm also posting guards there permanently. That'll scare away my customers. Your customers will appreciate knowing you take their safety seriously." He looked up. "The person responsible for tonight's vandalism won't be a problem anymore." Elena's stomach twisted. "What does that mean?" "It means exactly what it sounds like." "Did you kill someone?" Victor's expression didn't change. "I removed a problem. The method is irrelevant." "The method is everything, Victor. There's a difference between what? Between paying someone to leave and making them leave permanently?" He stood, moving around the desk toward her. "I don't kill people casually, Elena. I'm not a monster. But I am a man who understands that some problems don't respond to negotiation." "So you just, what? Make them disappear?" "I make them understand that continuing their current course of action would be catastrophically stupid. Most people are smart enough to adjust their behavior after that conversation." He stopped in front of her. "The man who vandalized your bakery was a hired gun. Low-level muscle paid by someone who wants to hurt me through you. I explained to him that accepting future contracts against you would be bad for his health. He understood. And if he hadn't understood, then I would have made sure he couldn't hurt you, whatever that required." Elena looked at his bloody knuckles. "You hit him." "I demonstrated my sincerity. He'll recover." "This is insane. This is my world. You signed up for it. I signed up to pretend to be your fiancé, not to have my business vandalized and watch you come home with blood on your hands. They're connected. You can't have one without the other." Victor's voice softened slightly. "I told you this was dangerous. I told you there would be consequences. You chose to stay anyway. I didn't choose this. You chose me. This comes with me." The words hung between them, heavy with implications Elena didn't want to examine. She looked at Victor, really looked at him. At the blood on his hands, at the exhaustion in his face, at the way he held himself like violence was always 3 seconds away. "I should be afraid of you," she said quietly. You should be. Most people are. But I'm not. I know, that's what makes you dangerous. Elena laughed, the sound bitter. I'm not dangerous. I'm a baker who got in over her head. You're a woman who threw herself in front of a weapon to protect someone she barely knew. You're a woman who stood up to my sister without flinching. You're a woman who's still here despite every reason to run. Victor stepped closer. That's the definition of dangerous, Elena. You don't break. And people who don't break are the ones who change everything. His hand came up, fingers brushing her cheek so gently it made her breath catch. His knuckles were still bloody. She should have pulled away, should have been disgusted. Instead, she found herself leaning into his touch and hating herself for it. You should get some sleep, Victor said, dropping his hand. You have employees to manage this afternoon. My bakery's destroyed. Your bakery will be functional by 2 p.m. I have a crew already there. He moved past her toward the door. There's food in the kitchen. Help yourself to anything. Collins is outside if you need something I can't provide. Victor. He stopped in the doorway. Thank you, Elena said. For tonight. For fixing it. For everything. Don't thank me. This is my fault. He looked back at her. And I'll spend however long it takes making sure it doesn't happen again. He left her standing in his study, surrounded by evidence of how thoroughly he'd researched her life, and Elena tried to decide if she should feel violated or protected. She settled on both. The bakery was perfect by 3 p.m. Elena stood outside, staring at her new window, thicker glass, probably bulletproof, knowing Victor. The door had been replaced entirely, now heavy steel disguised as wood. Inside, her walls had been scrubbed clean and repainted, her equipment checked and rechecked, her floors swept until they gleamed. 2 men in suits stood outside. They didn't acknowledge her. Didn't need to. Their presence was message enough. Sarah was waiting inside, her eyes wide. Elena, what happened? Break in. It's handled. Those guys outside? Security. It's fine. Is this about Victor Moretti? Because I've been reading things, and people are saying, people say a lot of things. Most of them are wrong. Elena grabbed her apron, trying to restore some sense of normalcy. We have orders to fill. Let's get to work. They worked through the afternoon, Elena's hands moving through familiar motions while her brain spun through everything else. The vandalism, Victor's bloody knuckles, the photos in his study, the way he'd touched her cheek like she was something precious instead of something he'd bought. Her phone buzzed around 5. Victor's number. Dinner tonight, 7 p.m. Wear the black dress with the silver detail. We're meeting someone important. Elena stared at the text. No, please. No, are you available? Just instructions delivered like they were law. She should have told him no. Should have established boundaries. Should have reminded him that she was a person, not a doll he could dress up and parade around. Instead, she texted back, fine, but we need to talk after. His response was immediate. About? Everything. That's not specific. It doesn't need to be. You know what I mean. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, after dinner. I'll make time. That was probably the closest to a promise she'd get. The black dress was stunning, fitted through the bodice, flowing from the waist, with silver threading that caught the light like stars. Elena looked at herself in Victor's guest room mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked expensive, sophisticated, like she belonged in Victor's world instead of just visiting it. She looked like a lie wrapped in designer clothing. Victor was waiting when she emerged, leaning against the kitchen counter in another perfect suit. His eyes traveled over her once, quick and assessing, then returned to her face. Perfect, he said. You keep saying that. Because you keep achieving it. He pushed off the counter. Tonight's dinner is with Daniel Cross. He owns most of the shipping companies on the East Coast and has political connections I need. He's traditional, conservative, and suspicious of unmarried men. Your job is to make him like you. That's specific. You asked for details. I'm providing them. Victor grabbed his keys. He'll ask about our relationship, about your business, about our future plans. Be honest about the bakery. Vague about everything else. What if he asks when we're getting married? Say we're discussing options, but nothing's decided, which is technically true. They rode to the restaurant in silence, Victor on his phone while Elena stared out the window and tried to calm her nerves. This was getting easier, but it was never easy. She was always one wrong word away from exposing the whole charade. Daniel Cross was exactly what Elena expected. Silver hair, expensive watch, smile that didn't reach his eyes. He shook her hand with the kind of grip that said he was testing her, measuring her worth in the span of 3 seconds. Ms. Vance, Victor tells me you run a bakery. I do. Moonflower, on 5th Street. Family business? No, sir. I built it myself. 7 years ago. Started in a kitchen the size of a closet. Elena smiled. Now we employ 6 people and we're expanding. Ambitious. I like that. Cross looked at Victor. You picked well. I know. Victor's hand settled on Elena's back, that now familiar pressure that meant pay attention. We're performing. Elena understands what it takes to build something from nothing. That's rare. The dinner that followed was a repeat of the mayor's dinner. Cross asking questions, Victor steering conversation, Elena playing her part. But something was different tonight. Victor kept touching her. Small gestures, his hand on her back, his fingers brushing hers when he passed her wine, his leg pressed against hers under the table. It felt deliberate, possessive, real. Elena tried to focus on Cross, on the conversation about shipping routes and port access, but her awareness kept returning to Victor beside her. The warmth of his leg, the way his thumb traced small circles on her back when Cross wasn't looking. This was supposed to be performance, but it was starting to feel like something else. So when's the wedding? Cross asked over dessert, and Elena's heart stuttered. Victor didn't hesitate. We're discussing options. Elena wants something small. I'm trying to convince her the city deserves a celebration. Smart woman. Big weddings are just showing off. Cross smiled at Elena. But Victor's right. A man in his position needs a statement, shows stability, commitment. We'll figure it out, Elena said, keeping her voice light. We're not in a rush. Don't wait too long. At our age, time matters. Cross stood, checking his watch. Victor, walk me out. I want to discuss the Port Authority contracts. Victor squeezed Elena's shoulder. I'll be right back. She watched them leave, watched them disappear toward the front entrance deep in conversation, and tried to catch her breath. The evening had been exhausting. Playing perfect, smiling on cue, pretending this was all real and permanent, pretending Victor's touches were just performance. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Against her better judgment, she opened the text. Enjoying your new life? Built on blood and lies. Victor Moretti destroys everything he touches. You're next. Elena's hand started shaking. She deleted the text immediately, blocked the number, but it didn't matter. The words were burned into her brain. Elena. She jumped. Victor had returned, his expression concerned. What's wrong? Nothing. You're white as a sheet. What happened? Just a text. Wrong number. She stood, grabbing her purse. Can we go? Victor's eyes narrowed, but he didn't push. He guided her out of the restaurant into the car and didn't speak until they were halfway back to his place. Show me the text. I deleted it. Elena, show me. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands and scrolled to the blocked numbers, showing him the last message before it disappeared. Victor read it, his jaw tightening with each word. This is escalating, he said quietly. I know. They're trying to isolate you, make you doubt me, make you afraid. It's working. Victor looked at her, really looked at her, and something in his expression cracked. What do you need me to say? The truth. Am I next? Am I just another thing you'll destroy? No. How do I know that? Because you're the first thing in 10 years I've wanted to protect instead of acquire. His voice was raw, stripped of its usual control. Because you make me remember what it feels like to care about someone's safety more than my own interests. Because when I saw your bakery destroyed, I wanted to burn down the entire city to find who did it. Elena's breath caught. Victor, I'm not good at this, at caring, at being anything other than what I've made myself into. He looked away, jaw tight. But you're changing that. And I don't know if that makes you my salvation or my biggest weakness. Both, probably. Yes, both. He pulled out his phone. I'm increasing your security. No more call-ins at night. You're staying here until this is resolved. I have a life. Your life doesn't matter if you're dead. Harsh, but honest. Stay here. Let me keep you safe. Then, when this is over, you can decide if you still want to be part of this world. Elena looked at him. At this man who threatened people with the same tone he used to order coffee, who'd researched her life like a project, who was currently looking at her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. What if I decide I want out? Then I let you go. No penalties, no revenge. Victor's voice was steady. But not until you're safe. That's non-negotiable. Why do you care so much? Because you saved my life. Because you don't break. Because when I look at you, I remember what it feels like to want to be better than what I am. He paused. And because somewhere between our first dinner and tonight, this stopped being business and became something I don't have words for. Elena's heart was pounding. This was dangerous territory. This was exactly what Victor had warned her not to feel. But she felt it anyway. We still need to talk, she said quietly, about the photos in your study, about what you do in the dark, about what happens when this year is over, after this is handled, when you're safe. You keep saying that like it's possible, like there's a version of this where I'm safe. There is. I just need to remove everyone standing between you and that version. Victor's expression hardened. And I will. Whatever it takes. They drove the rest of the way in silence. Elena moved into Victor's penthouse that night, officially. Collins brought her things. Not many, she didn't own much. And set them up in the guest room like this was normal, like people moved in with their fake fiancés every day. Victor disappeared into his study after showing her where everything was, making calls Elena couldn't quite hear through the closed door. She changed into pajamas, her own this time, not the ones he'd bought, and tried to sleep in a bed that cost more than she'd made in her best month at the bakery. She couldn't. Around midnight, she gave up and wandered into the kitchen. The city spread below her like a circuit board, all lights and angles. She made tea in Victor's pristine kitchen that probably had never seen actual cooking, and tried to process the fact that her life had become something she couldn't explain. Can't sleep? Elena turned. Victor stood in the doorway of his study, shirt untucked, tie gone, looking more human than she'd ever seen him. Too much in my head. Same. He moved into the kitchen, pulling out a bottle of whiskey she hadn't noticed. Want something stronger than tea? I shouldn't. That's not a no. He poured 2 glasses and handed her one. They stood there in his kitchen, drinking expensive whiskey at midnight, while the city glittered below them and the weight of everything unsaid pressed down like gravity. Tell me about the photos, Elena said finally. Victor was quiet for a long moment. I started watching you 8 months ago. Someone mentioned your bakery was struggling, that you might be amenable to an arrangement. I researched you, found out about Marcus, about your debts, about how hard you were working to survive. And you thought I'd be easy to manipulate. I thought you'd be desperate enough to say yes. He took a drink. I didn't expect you to be stubborn, or brave, or so completely incapable of giving up even when you should. Is that why you chose me? I chose you because you reminded me of someone I used to be, before I learned that caring about people makes you weak. He looked at her. And then you saved my life, and everything I'd told myself about you being a transaction became impossible to believe. Elena's throat felt tight. What do you want from me, Victor? I don't know anymore. I thought I wanted a year of your time. Now I'm starting to think a year won't be enough. That's not part of the contract. No, it's not. They stood there, the whiskey burning and the city glowing and something fragile building in the space between them. Elena knew she should go to bed, should maintain boundaries, should remember this was business. But when Victor reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering on her cheek, she didn't pull away. Your trouble, he said softly. You keep saying that. Because it keeps being true. His thumb brushed her jaw. Elena's breath caught. This was dangerous. This was exactly what they'd both said wouldn't happen. And then Victor's phone rang, shattering the moment like glass. He pulled back, his expression shifting from something soft to something cold and professional. I have to take this. He disappeared back into his study, and Elena was left alone in the kitchen with half-finished whiskey and the creeping certainty that she was falling for a man who'd told her from the beginning not to. She went to bed eventually, but sleep didn't come. Because somewhere between dinner and midnight, between whiskey and almost kisses, Elena had realized something terrifying. She didn't want the year to end. She wanted to stay. And that was the most dangerous thing she could possibly want. The next 3 weeks blurred into something Elena couldn't quite name. She lived in Victor's penthouse but kept her distance. Worked at her bakery during the day while guards she pretended not to see watched from across the street. Attended dinners and galas at night, playing the perfect fiancé while trying to ignore how natural it was starting to feel. And every night she and Victor would end up in that kitchen, drinking whiskey or tea or nothing at all, talking about things that mattered and things that didn't. Never touching again, but always close enough that the possibility hung in the air like static. It was driving her insane. "You're distracted," Sarah said one afternoon, watching Elena measure flour for the 3rd time because she kept losing count. "What's going on?" "Nothing." "That's a lie. You've been off for weeks. Ever since the break-in." Sarah lowered her voice. "Is Victor Moretti pressuring you?" "Because I've read things about him, Elena. He's dangerous. He's complicated. That's what women always say about men who hurt them." Elena's hands stilled on the measuring cup. "He's not Marcus." "I didn't say he was, but you're living in his house, you're attached to him at every public event, and you look exhausted all the time." Sarah's expression softened. "I'm worried about you." "Don't be. I'm fine." "Are you?" Elena wanted to say yes, wanted to believe it herself. Instead, she just returned to measuring flour and hoped Sarah would drop it. She didn't get that lucky. "He's changing you," Sarah said quietly. "And I don't know if it's for better or worse." The words stuck with Elena all day. She was still thinking about them that evening when Victor texted her. "Change of plans. Wear something comfortable. We're staying in tonight." Elena stared at the message, trying to decode it. Victor didn't do staying in. He did galas and dinners and strategic appearances. Comfortable wasn't in his vocabulary. "What's happening?" she texted back. "Nothing bad. Trust me." She almost laughed. Trust Victor Moretti, the man who'd researched her like a project, who'd threatened people for looking at her wrong, who came home with blood on his knuckles and called it handling problems. The man who'd touched her face at midnight like she was something precious. Elena changed into jeans and a soft sweater, the closest thing to comfortable in her borrowed wardrobe, and emerged from the guest room to find Victor in his kitchen actually cooking something. She stopped dead. "What are you doing?" "Making dinner. Sit." He gestured to the kitchen island without looking up from whatever he was doing at the stove. "You cook?" "I have many skills you haven't seen yet." He glanced at her. "Wine's in the fridge. Pour us both a glass." Elena moved on autopilot, pulling out a bottle of white wine that probably cost more than her first car. She poured 2 glasses and slid one across the counter to Victor, who caught it without breaking his rhythm at the stove. "Why are we staying in?" she asked. "Because I'm tired of performing, and you look like you're about to break." He turned off the heat, plating something that looked suspiciously like actual food. "Tonight, we're just 2 people having dinner. No contracts, no strategy, no audience." "We're always an audience of 2. "Then let's pretend we're not." He brought the plates over. Pasta with some kind of sauce Elena couldn't identify, salad, bread that wasn't from her bakery for once. It looked good. It looked normal. It looked terrifying. They ate in silence for a while, Elena hyper-aware of how domestic this felt, how wrong and right at the same time. Victor had loosened his tie but was still in his work clothes, and Elena was in jeans with her hair in a messy bun, and this felt more real than any of their carefully orchestrated public appearances. "Your employee thinks I'm dangerous," Victor said suddenly. Elena nearly choked on her wine. "What?" "Sarah. She watches me like she's waiting for me to hurt you." He took a bite of pasta, unbothered. "She's not wrong. You're not going to hurt me. Physically, no. Emotionally?" He shrugged. "That's less certain." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you should hear it from me before you figure it out yourself." Victor set down his fork. "I'm not good at this, Elena, at being close to someone, at caring whether they stay or leave. I've spent 10 years making sure I don't need anyone. And now? And now you're living in my house, and I can't stop thinking about what happens when the year ends and you leave." His voice was flat, but his eyes weren't. "That's a problem." Elena's heart was pounding. Victor, I'm not asking you to feel the same way. I'm just warning you that this arrangement has become complicated in ways the contract didn't account for. He picked up his fork again. Eat. The pasta's better warm. Elena stared at him. At this man who just admitted to caring about her with the same tone he'd used to discuss stock portfolios, who cooked her dinner and then told her he was emotionally unavailable in the same breath. You're the most confusing person I've ever met, she said. I'm honest. Most people find that confusing. Most people don't discuss their emotional limitations over homemade pasta. Most people waste time pretending they're better than they are. I'd rather you know exactly what you're dealing with. Elena laughed. She couldn't help it. And what am I dealing with? A man who's very good at destroying things and very bad at building them. Who wants you to stay but doesn't know how to ask. Who's terrified that caring about you makes me weak but can't seem to stop doing it anyway. Victor met her eyes. That clear enough? Painfully. Good. They finished dinner in silence that felt less uncomfortable now. Elena helped him clean up. He washed, she dried, moving around each other in his pristine kitchen like they'd done this 1,000 times. It felt normal, dangerous, impossible. I need to tell you something, Elena said as she dried the last plate. Victor's hand stilled in the soapy water. What? The night of the vandalism, when you came home with bloody knuckles, she set down the dish towel. I wasn't scared of you, I was scared for you. There's a difference? A big one. She turned to face him. I should have been horrified, should have run, but all I could think was that you'd gotten hurt protecting me, and I hated that. Victor dried his hands slowly, his expression unreadable. What are you saying? That Sarah's right. You are changing me, but not in the way she thinks. Elena took a breath. I'm starting to care about you, Victor. Really care. Not because of the contract or the money or any of this. She gestured vaguely at the penthouse. Just because of you? That's a mistake. Probably. I warned you not to fall in love with me. You did. I'm ignoring that warning. Elena, I'm not asking you to love me back. I'm just telling you the truth because you said honesty matters. She wrapped her arms around herself. So there it is. I care about you, and I don't know what to do about it. Victor stood there, water dripping from his hands onto his expensive floor, looking at her like she'd just detonated something he couldn't defuse. Then he closed the distance between them in 2 steps and kissed her. It wasn't gentle, wasn't tentative. It was desperate and hungry and tasted like wine, and the kind of want Elena had been trying not to acknowledge for weeks. His hands cupped her face like she was breakable, and Elena grabbed his shirt like she was drowning. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Victor pressed his forehead to hers. This complicates everything, he said. I know. The contract, I don't care about the contract. You should. It's the only thing protecting us both from this becoming a disaster. Maybe disaster is what we need. Victor laughed, the sound ragged. You're going to destroy me. Good. You deserve it. He kissed her again, slower this time. Thorough, like he was memorizing the shape of her mouth, the taste of her, the way she made small sounds when his teeth caught her bottom lip. Elena's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, and Victor's hands slid from her face to her waist to her hips, lifting her onto the kitchen counter without breaking contact. This was insane. This was exactly what they'd both said wouldn't happen. This was breaking every rule they'd established. Elena didn't care. Victor's phone rang. He ignored it. It rang again. And again. Finally, swearing under his breath, he pulled back and grabbed it from his pocket. This better be life or death, he growled into the phone. Elena watched his expression change, from frustration to focus to something cold and deadly. Her stomach dropped. When? He asked. Then, how many? Then, I'm on my way. He hung up and looked at Elena, and she saw the man who'd made Marcus run, who'd come home with bloody knuckles, who'd promised to go to war for her. What happened? She asked. Someone just hit one of my properties, burned it to the ground. His jaw was tight. They left a message. They know you're here. Elena's blood went cold. How? Because they've been watching, waiting for the right moment. He was already moving toward his study, pulling out his phone again. Collins is on his way up. You're not leaving this building until I handle this. Victor, wait. No, this is what I was afraid of. They're escalating because they know you matter to me. He stopped at his study door, looking back at her. Stay here. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but Collins or me. Where are you going? To end this. The coldness in his voice made her shiver. Tonight. Permanently. You can't just... Yes, I can. And I will. He disappeared into his study, and Elena heard him making calls in that clipped, deadly tone that meant someone was about to have a very bad night. Collins arrived 5 minutes later, his expression grim. Ma'am, Mr. Moretti wants you in your room. I'll be right outside the door. What's happening? Something that's been building for weeks. Mr. Moretti's handling it. By handling it, you mean? By doing what he does best, ma'am. I'd suggest you don't think too hard about the details. Victor emerged from his study in different clothes, all black, no tie, looking like violence personified. He had a gun tucked into a shoulder holster Elena hadn't known he owned. Her breath caught. Victor, I'll be back by morning. He stopped in front of her, his hand cupping her face. Don't leave this building. Don't open the door. Don't do anything stupid. That's not reassuring. It's not meant to be. It's meant to keep you alive. He kissed her, quick, hard, final. If something goes wrong, don't say that. If something goes wrong, Collins has instructions. He'll take care of you. I don't want Collins to take care of me. I want you to come back. I will, but I need you to understand what I'm about to do. His eyes were dark, serious. People are going to get hurt tonight, maybe killed. And it's happening because they threatened you, because they made the mistake of thinking they could use you against me. Victor, I'm not a good man, Elena. I've done things that would make you leave if you knew the details. But I'm your man, and I protect what's mine. He kissed her again, softer this time. So I'm asking you to trust me. One more time. Elena looked at him, at this man who'd bought her a second bakery without asking, who'd made Marcus disappear, who'd just kissed her in his kitchen like she was everything. Come back to me, she said. Always. He left with Collins, leaving Elena alone in a penthouse that suddenly felt too big and too empty. She tried to sleep, tried to watch TV, tried to do anything other than imagine what Victor was doing in the dark. She failed at all of it. The hours crawled past. Midnight, 2 a.m., 4 a.m. Elena sat on the couch wrapped in a blanket, staring at the city below, wondering if she'd just watched the man she was falling for walk into something he couldn't walk back from. Her phone buzzed at 5:30. Victor's number. It's done. Coming home. Elena's hands shook as she typed. Are you okay? Define okay. Are you hurt? Nothing permanent. Go back to sleep. I'll be there soon. She didn't go back to sleep. She waited in the kitchen, making coffee she didn't drink, watching the sun come up over a city that didn't know what had happened in its shadows last night. Victor walked in at 6:15. He looked like he'd walked through hell. Blood on his shirt. Not his, she didn't think. Bruises forming on his jaw. His knuckles were worse than last time, split and swollen. But he was alive. He was walking. He was here. Elena was across the kitchen before she could think, throwing her arms around him hard enough to hurt. Victor caught her, his arms coming around her like steel, and for a long moment they just stood there. You're okay, she whispered against his chest. More or less. His voice was rough, exhausted. It's over, Elena. The people who were targeting you are gone, all of them. Gone how? Gone in ways you don't need details about, but they won't be coming back. He pulled back enough to look at her face. You're safe now, really safe. This is over. Elena looked up at him, at the blood and bruises and exhaustion. What did you do? What I had to, what I promised. His hand came up to her face, thumb brushing her cheek. You don't need to know more than that. Victor, please, let me protect you from this part of me. His voice cracked slightly. Let me be the man who comes home to you instead of the one who does what I did tonight. Elena's throat felt tight. She should have been horrified, should have demanded details, should have done anything other than what she did. But she just pulled him closer and held on. Come on, she said quietly. Let's get you cleaned up. She led him to his bathroom, marble and glass and bigger than her old apartment. Victor sat on the edge of the bathtub while Elena found first aid supplies and started cleaning his knuckles. He watched her work, silent, his eyes tracking every movement. You should be running, he said finally. Where would I go? Anywhere. Away from me. Away from this. I don't want away from this. Elena finished with one hand and started on the other. I want you, all of you, even the parts that scare me. Those parts should scare you. They do, but they don't make me want to leave. Victor caught her wrist, stopping her hands. I killed someone tonight. The words hung in the air between them. Elena's breath caught, but she didn't pull away. The man who ordered the vandalism, who sent people after you, who was planning something worse. Victor's voice was flat, emotionless. I gave him a choice. Leave the city and never come back, or face consequences. He chose to pull a gun, so I made a different choice. Did you have to? Yes. Him or you. That's always been the choice. His grip on her wrist tightened slightly. And I'll choose you every time. Does that make me a monster? Elena looked at him, really looked, at the blood and bruises, at the exhaustion in his eyes, at the way he was waiting for her to recoil. She didn't recoil. It makes you someone who protects what matters to him, she said quietly. Right or wrong, that's what it makes you. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have right now. She pulled her wrist free and went back to cleaning his knuckles. Ask me again in a year. Maybe I'll have a better one. Victor laughed, the sound broken. You're insane. Probably, but I'm your insane. Yes. He pulled her close, pressing his forehead to hers. You are. And that's the most terrifying thing that's ever happened to me. They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped up in each other in Victor's pristine bathroom while the city woke up outside. Elena knew she should be processing what he'd just told her, should be grappling with the reality of who he was and what he'd done. But all she could think was that he'd come home, that he'd kept his promise, that he was here and alive and holding her like she was the only thing keeping him anchored. Go to sleep, she said finally. You look dead on your feet. Come with me. Victor, I'm not asking you to sleep with me. I'm asking you to just be there, so I know you're real. His voice was rough. Please. Elena nodded. They moved to his room, a space she'd never seen before, all dark colors and expensive furniture. Victor stripped off his bloody shirt and collapsed onto the bed fully clothed. Elena lay down beside him, and immediately his arm came around her, pulling her close. Thank you, he murmured against her hair. For what? For not running, for not being afraid of me, for being here when I came back. Where else would I be? Smart people would be anywhere else. Good thing I'm not smart then. Victor's laugh was soft, fading as exhaustion pulled him under. Within minutes, his breathing evened out, and Elena lay there in his arms, staring at the ceiling, trying to process the fact that she was in bed with a man who just admitted to killing someone. She should have been horrified. She should have been afraid. Instead, she felt safe, protected, like nothing in the world could touch her as long as she was here. And that was probably the most terrifying thing of all. Elena woke up hours later to find Victor watching her, his dark eyes serious in the afternoon light filtering through the curtains. Hi, she said. Hi. His voice was still rough from sleep. You stayed. You asked me to. I thought you'd leave once I was asleep. Thought you'd come to your senses. I'm still not very sensible where you're concerned. Victor's hand came up, fingers tracing her jaw. The year's not up yet. I know. We still have 8 months on the contract. I know that too. And you still want to stay? Elena looked at him, at this man who'd threatened and protected and killed for her, who'd bought her a second bakery without asking, who'd made her pasta and kissed her in his kitchen and come home covered in blood. I don't want to stay because of the contract, she said quietly. I want to stay because of you. That's a terrible reason. Probably. But it's my reason. Victor pulled her closer, his forehead pressing to hers. You're going to ruin me, Elena Vance. Good. You deserve it. I really don't. Let me be the judge of that. He kissed her then, slow and deep and tasting like possibility, like danger, like everything Elena had been trying not to want and failing spectacularly at resisting. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Victor's phone rang. He ignored it. It rang again. "You should get that," Elena said. "I should, but I'm not going to. What if it's important?" "Everything's important. That doesn't mean it matters more than this." The phone stopped ringing, started again immediately. Victor swore and grabbed it. "What?" Elena watched his expression shift, could hear someone talking urgently on the other end. "When?" Victor asked. Then, "How bad?" Then, "I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up and looked at Elena, and she saw something in his face that made her stomach drop. "What happened?" "Someone just hit your bakery. Again." His jaw tightened. "But this time they took Sarah." Elena's world tilted. "What?" "They grabbed her an hour ago, left another message." Victor was already moving, pulling on clothes, his face going cold and focused. "They want to trade. Sarah for you." "Then let's trade." "Absolutely not." "Victor, she's in danger because of me." "She's in danger because someone's trying to use her to get to you, which isn't the same thing." "Motam." He grabbed his phone, already dialing. "We're not trading anything. We're getting her back." "How?" Victor looked at her, and Elena saw the man who'd made Marcus disappear, who'd come home with blood on his knuckles, who'd promised to go to war for her. "By reminding everyone in this city exactly who I am," he said quietly. "And what happens when they take what's mine?" He made 3 phone calls, gave instructions Elena couldn't quite follow. Then he turned to her with an expression that was part determination, part fury. "Get dressed. Something dark. We're going to get your employee back." "We?" "You're coming with me. Not to trade, to watch." His voice was hard. "I want you to see what happens to people who threaten you. I want you to understand exactly what you're choosing when you choose me." "Victor, no arguments. You wanted honesty? You wanted all of me?" He grabbed her shoulders, not hard but firm. "Then you get this part too. The part that burns things down when someone takes what matters to me." Elena looked at him and realized he was giving her a choice. A real one. She could stay here, safe, and let him handle this alone. Or she could go with him and see exactly who Victor Moretti became when someone crossed him. She chose. "Let me get dressed," she said. Victor's smile was sharp and cold and absolutely lethal. "That's my girl." Elena changed into black jeans and a dark sweater, her hands steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. Sarah was in danger because of her, because Elena had signed a contract with a man who operated in shadows and violence, because she'd been naive enough to think she could touch Victor's world without consequences bleeding into her own. She found Victor in his study, standing over a table covered in papers and what looked like building schematics. 3 men she'd never seen before stood with him, all wearing the same dark clothes, all carrying the same dangerous stillness that Collins had. "The warehouse on Pier 17, one of them was saying. "They're using the old shipping containers for cover. At least 4 men inside, probably more outside." "Sarah?" Victor's voice was clipped, focused. "Tied up in the northwest corner. Scared, but unharmed. They're waiting for your call." Victor's jaw tightened. "They're not getting a call. They're getting a visit." Elena stepped into the study, and all 4 men turned to look at her. She felt their assessment, quick and thorough, but Victor's gaze was the only one that mattered. "Ready?" he asked. "No, but let's go anyway." Something flickered in his eyes. Approval, maybe, or concern. "Stay behind me at all times. Do exactly what I say, when I say it. If I tell you to run, you run. Understood?" "Understood." "I mean it, Elena. This isn't a negotiation. If things go wrong, they won't. If they do," Victor continued, his voice hard, "Collins will get you out. He'll take you somewhere safe, somewhere I've prepared. There's money, documents, everything you'd need to disappear." Elena's stomach twisted. "You've planned for me to disappear?" "I've planned for every contingency. That's how I've stayed alive this long." He moved toward her, his hand cupping her face. "But I'm not planning to die tonight. I'm planning to get your employee back and end this permanently." "And then what?" "And then we figure out what we are to each other without people trying to kill you." He kissed her, quick and hard, then turned back to his men. Let's move. The drive to Pier 17 took 30 minutes that felt like 3 hours. Elena sat in the back of a black SUV with Victor beside her, watching the city pass by while he gave calm, precise instructions through his phone. She could hear responses on the other end, affirmatives, confirmations, the machinery of whatever Victor had built humming to life. "How many people work for you?" she asked quietly. "Directly? About 40? Indirectly?" He shrugged. "Hundreds. Maybe more. I don't keep exact counts. And they all do this? They all do whatever I need them to do. Some handle legitimate business, some handle problems." He looked at her. "The ones coming with us tonight handle problems." The SUV pulled into an alley 3 blocks from the pier, parking beside 2 other identical vehicles. Men emerged from the shadows, more of them than Elena had expected, all dressed in black, all moving with that same dangerous efficiency. Victor stepped out, and immediately the atmosphere shifted. The men gathered around him, and Elena watched him transform from the man who'd made her pasta to something else entirely. Something cold and commanding and absolutely in control. 4-man entry teams, north and south entrances simultaneously. Suppressed weapons only. I want this quiet. His voice carried authority that made even the most dangerous-looking men straighten. "The girl is northwest corner. Nobody touches her. And the men who took her?" He paused. "Those are mine." The men dispersed without question, melting into the darkness. Victor turned to Elena, his expression softening slightly. "You stay with Collins in the SUV. He'll have eyes on everything through the cameras my team is placing. You'll be able to see Sarah, see that she's safe." "I want to come with you." "No." "Victor?" "No, Elena. Not this time." His hand came to her face. "I need to know you're safe so I can focus on getting Sarah out. Please, let me do this without worrying about you." Elena wanted to argue, wanted to insist she could handle it, but she saw the tension in Victor's shoulders, the way his jaw was locked tight, and realized he was barely holding it together. "Okay," she said quietly. "Be careful. Always." He kissed her forehead, then looked at Collins. "If anything happens to me, it won't, sir. If it does, you know what to do." Collins nodded, and Victor disappeared into the darkness, with the fluid grace of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Elena climbed into the SUV where Collins had set up a laptop showing multiple camera feeds. She could see the warehouse from 4 different angles, could see shadows moving along the perimeter, could see a single light burning in the northwest corner where a figure sat slumped in a chair. "That's Sarah," Elena breathed. "Yes, ma'am, and Mr. Moretti's team is in position." Elena watched the screens, her heart pounding. She saw Victor's men move like ghosts, saw them take positions at both entrances, saw the precision that came from extensive training and absolute trust in their leader. Then everything happened at once. Both doors breached simultaneously. Gunfire, muffled, almost quiet, erupted inside. Men shouted. Something crashed. And through it all, Elena watched Victor move through the warehouse like violence personified, taking down anyone who stood between him and Sarah with brutal efficiency. It was over in 90 seconds. Victor appeared on one of the screens, cutting Sarah's restraints and helping her stand. Elena could see her employee was crying, shaking, but walking, alive, unharmed. "He got her," Collins said quietly. "Sir, the target is secure." Elena watched Victor guide Sarah toward the exit, one of his men taking over to escort her out, while Victor turned back into the warehouse. She couldn't see what he was doing, the camera angle was wrong, but she saw 3 men on their knees, hands behind their heads, and Victor standing in front of them. "Collins, what's he doing?" "What needs to be done, ma'am?" That's not an answer. Collins glanced at her. "Mr. Moretti doesn't leave loose ends. These men kidnapped your employee, threatened you, tried to use violence to manipulate him. He's making sure they understand that was a mistake." Elena's throat felt tight. "Is he going to kill them?" "I don't know, ma'am. That's his decision to make." She watched the screen, watched Victor talk to the kneeling men, his posture relaxed but his presence radiating threat. She couldn't hear what he was saying, but she saw one of the men try to stand and saw Victor's hand move, fast, brutal, dropping the man back to his knees. Then Victor pulled out his phone, made a call, and within minutes, police lights appeared on the edge of the screen. Elena blinked. He called the police? Mr. Moretti has connections. These men will be arrested for kidnapping, held without bail, and they'll serve significant time. Collins's expression was neutral. Sometimes the legal system is more effective than alternatives, and it sends a message. What message? That Mr. Moretti doesn't need to kill people to destroy them, that he owns enough of the system to make them disappear legally. Collins closed the laptop. It's actually more frightening than the alternative. Victor emerged from the warehouse as police cars surrounded it, walking past officers who nodded to him with respect that bordered on deference. He went straight to Sarah, who was wrapped in a blanket and sobbing, and Elena saw him talk to her with unexpected gentleness. Then he was walking toward the SUV, and Elena's heart kicked into overdrive. He opened the door and slid in beside her, pulling her into his arms without a word. Elena held on to him, breathing in his scent, cologne and gunpowder and something uniquely him, and tried to process what she'd just witnessed. "Sarah?" she asked against his chest. Shaken but unharmed, "One of my men is taking her home. I've arranged for a security detail for the next month." His arms tightened around her. "It's over, Elena. Really over. The people who took her, the organization behind all of this, I made it very clear what happens if they come near you or anyone connected to you again." "You didn't kill them." "No, I did something worse. I made them face consequences they can't buy or threaten their way out of. They'll spend the next 20 years in prison thinking about the mistake they made." He pulled back to look at her face. "Does that disappoint you?" "No, it—" Elena didn't know how to finish that sentence. She'd expected violence, expected Victor to be the man who came home with blood on his knuckles. Instead, he'd been strategic, controlled, and somehow more frightening for it. "It scares you," Victor finished for her. "A little, but not in the way you think." She touched his face, feeling the tension in his jaw. "I'm scared because I watched you command a small army and saw how easily you could destroy someone. But I'm also grateful because you got Sarah back safely. And I'm confused because I don't know how to reconcile those two things." "You don't have to reconcile them. They both exist. I'm both the man who makes you pasta and the man who orchestrates raids on warehouses." His voice was quiet. "You wanted all of me, Elena. This is part of it." "I know. And you're still here." "I'm still here." Victor pulled her close again, and they sat like that while Collins drove them back to the penthouse through a city that didn't know what had just happened in its shadows. The next few days were strange. Sarah took a week off to recover, paid leave that Elena suspected Victor had arranged. The bakery ran smoothly despite everything, with Elena's other employees stepping up and the new security making everyone feel safer than they probably should. Victor was different too, less guarded. Like having Elena witness what he was capable of and choosing to stay anyway had shifted something fundamental. They fell into a routine that felt dangerously domestic. Victor would leave early for whatever business he conducted in daylight hours. Elena would work at the bakery, now expanded into a second location that was already showing promise. They'd have dinner together, sometimes out at necessary appearances, but increasingly at the penthouse, just the two of them. And every night, Elena would end up in Victor's bed. Not for sex, they hadn't crossed that line yet, though the tension was building, but just to be close. To sleep wrapped up in each other, like they were afraid of what would happen if they let go. 3 weeks after the warehouse, Lucia showed up at the bakery unannounced. Elena was elbow-deep in bread dough when she looked up to see Victor's sister standing in her kitchen, perfectly polished and completely out of place. "Can I help you?" Elena asked, wiping flour on her apron. "I wanted to see where you work, where you built something real." Lucia looked around the kitchen with genuine interest. "Victor talks about it constantly." "He does?" "It's nauseating." Elena expanded to a second location. Elena hired 3 more employees. Elena's quarterly projections looked strong. Lucia's smile was sharp. "He's proud of you. That's rare." Elena's hand stilled in the dough. "Why are you really here?" "Because the contract expires in 6 months and Victor hasn't mentioned it once." Lucia leaned against the counter. "Usually he's meticulous about timelines, but he acts like you're permanent now, like the expiration date doesn't exist." "What's your point?" "My point is that I've never seen my brother like this. He's always been controlled, strategic, emotionally unavailable. But you broke something in him, or fixed something. I can't tell which. Lucia's expression softened slightly. What are you going to do when the year is up? Elena returned to kneading dough, needing something to do with her hands. I don't know. You love him. It wasn't a question. Elena didn't answer anyway. He loves you too, though he'll probably never say it. Not directly. Lucia pushed off the counter. My brother destroys things. It's what he's good at. But you make him want to build instead. That's powerful. I'm not trying to change him. I know. That's why it's working. Lucia moved toward the door, then paused. Don't hurt him, Elena. He's more fragile than he looks. She left before Elena could respond. That night, Elena brought it up over dinner. Your sister came to see me today. Victor's fork paused halfway to his mouth. What did she want? To tell me you're fragile. I'm not fragile. She also said you talk about my business constantly. I mention it occasionally, and that the contract expires in 6 months. Victor set down his fork, his expression unreadable. We don't have to discuss that now. Yes, we do, because I don't know what we're doing, Victor. Are we still playing pretend? Is this still business? Or did we cross a line somewhere and forget to acknowledge it? We crossed the line weeks ago, you know that. Then what happens in 6 months? Victor was quiet for a long moment. Then, what do you want to happen? Elena's heart was pounding. I want to stay, not because of the contract or the money, just because I want to be with you. Even knowing what I am, what I do, especially knowing that, because I've seen all of you and I'm still here. Victor stood, moving around the table to pull her to her feet. His hands cupped her face with a gentleness that never failed to surprise her. I don't deserve you, he said quietly. Probably not, but you have me anyway. For how long? How long do you want me? Longer than 6 months, longer than a year. His thumb brushed her cheek. Longer than I know how to ask for. Elena's breath caught. Then ask. Stay. After the contract ends, after the year is up, after there's no financial obligation keeping you here. His voice was rough. Stay because you want to, because I need you to, because I don't know how to be who I'm becoming without you. That's not asking, that's telling. I'm not good at asking, I'm good at commanding. Try anyway. Victor took a breath. Elena Vance, will you stay with me after this arrangement ends? Not as my employee or my contracted fiancé, but as... He paused. As whatever we are to each other. As the person I come home to. As someone I care about more than I thought I was capable of caring about anything. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. That's better. Is that a yes? On one condition. Victor's expression tightened. What condition? We make it real. No more contracts, no more business arrangements, no more pretending. Elena's hands came up to cover his. If I stay as your partner. Your equal. Not someone you protect and provide for, but someone who stands beside you. You already do that. Then make it official, really official. Victor stared at her. Then, slowly, he dropped to one knee in his expensive kitchen, still holding her hands. Elena's heart stopped. I don't have a ring. I didn't plan this. I'm terrible at spontaneity and worse at romance. Victor looked up at her. But I know that I want you in my life permanently, not for a year, not for convenience, because you make me remember what it's like to care about building something instead of destroying it. Victor, will you marry me? Really marry me? Not for show or for contracts, but because we both know this stopped being fake months ago? Elena started crying. She couldn't help it. You're really bad at proposals. Is that a no? It's a yes, you impossible man. She pulled him to his feet, kissing him through her tears. Yes, I'll marry you, really marry you. Victor kissed her back, deep and thorough and tasting like promise. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead to hers. I'm going to buy you the most obscene ring, he said. I don't need an obscene ring. Too bad. You're getting one anyway. And a wedding that will make the mayor's gala look like a backyard barbecue. I want something small. I know. We'll compromise. Small ceremony, obscene reception. He smiled, and it transformed his whole face. We're good at compromise. We're terrible at compromise. Then we'll keep being terrible at it together. They spent that night making plans. Real plans. Not contingencies or exit strategies. Plans for a wedding. For combining their lives. For what came after. And for the first time since signing that contract, Elena felt like she could breathe. The actual wedding happened 3 months later. Victor had tried to plan something massive. Elena had put her foot down. They'd compromised on something in between. A ceremony at a small chapel with just family and close friends, followed by a reception at Victor's building that somehow involved half the city's power players. Elena wore a dress that made her feel like a princess. Victor wore a tuxedo that made him look like a fantasy. And when they said their vows, real vows, not ones written by lawyers, Elena barely held it together. "I promise to stay," she said, her voice shaking. "Through whatever comes. Through the darkness and the light. Through the good decisions and the questionable ones. Because you make me braver than I thought I could be." Victor's vows were simpler, delivered in that controlled voice that cracked slightly at the edges. "I promise to protect you. To build with you instead of destroying. To be worthy of the trust you've given me even when I don't deserve it. And to love you longer than either of us can imagine." When they kissed, the small chapel erupted in applause. The reception was chaos in the best way. Lucia gave a toast that somehow managed to be touching and threatening simultaneously. The mayor made an appearance. Elena's employees came, including Sarah, who'd fully recovered and was now running the second location. And through it all, Victor never left Elena's side. They danced to music Elena didn't recognize, ate cake she hadn't made but was surprisingly good, accepted congratulations from people who mattered and people who didn't. And when it was finally over, when the last guest had left, and they were alone in Victor's penthouse, their penthouse now, Elena kicked off her heels and collapsed on the couch. "We did it," she said. "We did." Victor sat beside her, loosening his tie. "Any regrets?" "None. You?" "Only that I didn't ask sooner." Elena curled into his side, feeling his arm come around her. "So what now?" "Now we live, we build, we figure out what forever actually looks like." "That's terrifying." "Good terrifying or bad terrifying?" "Both. Mostly good." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city glitter below them. Elena thought about the desperate woman who'd walked into Aurelia 6 months ago, drowning in debt and fear and the weight of a life that was collapsing. She thought about the contract she'd signed, the dangerous man she'd agreed to pretend to love, the line between performance and reality that had blurred beyond recognition. "I love you," she said quietly. "I don't think I've actually said that out loud yet." Victor's arm tightened around her. "I love you too, though I'm terrible at saying it." "You'll get better." "Probably not. But I'll keep trying." Elena smiled against his chest. "That's all I need." 6 weeks later, Elena found out she was pregnant. She stared at the positive test in Victor's bathroom, her hands shaking, trying to process the reality of bringing a child into their complicated, dangerous, beautiful life. Victor found her there 10 minutes later, still staring at the test. "Elena? What's wrong?" She handed him the test without speaking. Victor looked at it, looked at her, looked at the test again. Then he sat down on the edge of the bathtub, and Elena couldn't read his expression. "Say something," she whispered. "I don't know what to say." "Are you upset?" "No, I'm—" He looked up at her, and Elena saw something raw in his face. "I'm terrified. I'm a man who solves problems with threats and violence. How am I supposed to be a father?" Elena sat beside him, taking his hand. "The same way you learn to be a husband. Badly at first, then better over time." "That's not reassuring." "It's not supposed to be reassuring. It's supposed to be honest." Victor was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I want this. I want a family with you. I want to build something that matters." His hand moved to her stomach, tentative and gentle. "But I don't know how to be good at it." "Nobody does. We'll figure it out together." "What if I'm terrible at it?" "Then you'll be terrible at it while I'm also terrible at it. And our kid will grow up thinking everyone's parents are disaster humans who love each other anyway." Victor laughed, the sound surprised out of him. "That's actually not the worst plan." "I'm full of not the worst plans." He pulled her close, his hand still on her stomach, and they sat like that for a long time. The pregnancy was easier than Elena expected. Victor was more protective than should have been possible, hovering in ways that drove her insane while somehow being exactly what she needed. He installed an elevator in the bakery because stairs were unnecessary risk. He hired a full medical team on standby. He read every book on pregnancy and parenting he could find, approaching fatherhood like it was a business merger he could strategize his way through. Elena loved him for all of it. Their daughter was born on a Tuesday in March, 7 months after the wedding. Victor held Elena's hand through labor, looking more terrified than she'd ever seen him, and when the baby finally arrived, small and perfect and screaming, he cried. Elena had never seen him cry before. "She's beautiful," he whispered, staring at the tiny human the nurse placed in his arms. "She's perfect." "She's ours," Elena said. Victor looked at her, tears still on his face, and smiled. "Yes, she is." They named her Sophia after Victor's grandmother, and watching Victor with their daughter, this man who'd threatened and protected and killed for Elena, seeing him hold their baby with a gentleness she hadn't known he possessed, Elena realized something profound. They'd built something real, something permanent, something that mattered more than contracts or money or any of the things that had brought them together. They'd built a family. 2 years later, Elena stood in her third bakery location, watching her employees work with pride swelling in her chest. Her business had grown beyond anything she'd imagined. Her marriage had deepened into something she couldn't find words for. And Sophia, their beautiful, stubborn, fearless daughter, was at home with Victor, probably convincing him to read the same book 17 times. Her phone buzzed. A text from Victor. "Sophia insists we need cupcakes, strawberries specifically. Can you bring some home?" Elena smiled and typed back, "What does Sophia need, or what do you need? Both. But mostly Sophia. She has me wrapped around her finger. Good. Someone should keep you humble." "Too late. You already did that." Elena looked around her bakery, the business she'd built from nothing, that Victor had helped save, that had grown beyond her wildest dreams. She thought about this contract she'd signed, the year that had turned into forever, the pretend relationship that had become the realest thing in her life. She thought about the desperate woman who'd walked into Aurelius expecting humiliation and found salvation instead. And she thought about Victor, the dangerous, complicated, impossible man who'd offered her a deal and given her a life. Her phone buzzed again. "I love you. Bring extra cupcakes. I have a feeling we'll need them." Elena typed back, "I love you too." "And Victor?" "Yes?" "Thank you for everything, for saving me, for letting me save you back, for building this with me." The response came immediately. "You saved me first. I just didn't realize it until you refused to leave. No regrets? Only that I waited so long to ask you to stay." Elena pocketed her phone, grabbed a box of cupcakes, strawberry plus chocolate because she knew Victor better than he knew himself, and headed home to her family, to the life she'd built with a man who'd started as a stranger offering salvation and become her partner, her husband, her home. To the future they were creating together, one day at a time, with all its complications and compromises and beautiful imperfections. She drove through the city as the sun set, painting everything gold, and thought about beginnings and endings and the space in between where real life happened, where desperate women found dangerous men, where contracts became promises, where pretend love became real, and where two broken people built something whole from all their jagged pieces. Elena parked outside Victor's building, their building, and smiled. This was her life now, chaotic and complicated and absolutely perfect in its imperfection, and she wouldn't change a single thing. She rode the elevator up, cupcakes in hand, ready to go home to her family, ready for whatever came next, ready for forever with the man who'd promised to protect her and had given her so much more. The elevator doors opened, and she heard Sophia's laugh echoing from inside the penthouse, heard Victor's voice responding, patient and warm and so different from the cold man he used to be. Elena walked inside to find them on the floor, surrounded by picture books and stuffed animals. Sophia saw her first, scrambling to her feet. "Mama, cupcakes!" "Yes, baby, strawberry, just like you wanted." Victor looked up, and the smile on his face was worth every moment of fear and uncertainty that had brought them here. "Welcome home." Elena set down the cupcakes and joined them on the floor, pulling Sophia into her lap while Victor's arm came around her shoulders. Home, she agreed, leaning into him. Finally. They ate cupcakes on the floor while Sophia told elaborate stories only a 2-year-old could create. They laughed at jokes that weren't funny. They made plans for tomorrow and next week and next year. They lived. And when Sophia finally fell asleep between them, exhausted from sugar and stories, Victor looked at Elena across their daughter's sleeping form. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For staying, for building this, for making me remember what it's like to love something more than power." Elena reached across Sophia to take his hand. "Thank you for asking me to stay, for protecting me, for becoming someone worth staying for. Was I not worth it before?" "You were always worth it. You just didn't believe it yet." Victor squeezed her hand and they sat like that, their daughter between them, their future ahead of them, their past forgiven and forgotten. From a desperate dinner to this, from a contract to a family, from pretend to forever. It wasn't the story Elena had imagined for herself, it was better. And as she sat on the floor of their home, surrounded by cupcake crumbs and picture books and the two people who mattered most, Elena realized something profound. She'd started this journey looking for salvation. She'd found it, not in money or security, but in the dangerous man who'd seen her strength when she'd forgotten she had any. In the life they'd built together from broken pieces and bruised hearts. In the family they'd created against all odds. And in the love that had started as performance and become the most real thing either of them had ever known. Elena Vance had walked into Aurelius drowning, and Victor Moretti had taught her how to breathe again. Not by saving her, but by letting her save him back. That was how their story ended, and how their forever began.